The price of oil is set to climb if members of OPEC and Russia agree on November the 30th to curb crude production. But for once, it's not all about OPEC. The Donald Trump factor means the president-elect could intensify OPEC's worries over loss of market share with his plans to ramp up production, which would be easier if the price goes up in response to an OPEC cut. So it kind of goes around in circles. But Abhishek Deshpande here with me now to make sense of it all. As I was saying, it's a bit of a vicious circle in this sense, isn't it? Because obviously if OPEC do make this decision, oil will essentially rise, and then these producers will start producing more, and then we'll end up with more of a glut.
Yeah, unfortunately, they are in a bit of a rock and a hard place here, OPEC, and what they're finding it difficult is by how much they should raise the price by, or by cutting by how much. Because if they do, unfortunately, it is right. They're looking for this Goldilocks situation whereby US production, of course, realistically speaking, they know will rise, but they don't want it to rise by too much. But unfortunately, what is not there in their hands is that if they cut production, depending on how much they announce, let's say 1 million barrels per day, oil is likely to go above that Goldilocks situation that they are looking at. And that rise in oil price is most likely to return more oil than OPEC is prepared to balance the market with its own reductions right now.
OK, so what is the answer to this? I mean, really, essentially, what do you think is going to happen next week?
To be honest, they are trying hard to cut because that seems to be the right solution in a way. If they don't cut, oil most definitely will fall immediately because we are entering a quarter, which is first and second quarter of next year, which is seasonally low. And we already see excess oil in the market in terms of balances already, in terms of surplus. So if they don't do anything, there's most definitely oil will fall. But hence, in our view, they have to do something. And we do believe that the stronger players like Saudi Arabia is really trying hard to gather forces and try and have an agreement. But on the other hand, we also remain slightly skeptical. It's because the decision is not completely in Saudi Arabia's hands today, because they don't pull the same clout that they did in the 80s and 90s. And if one or two members like Iran and Iraq disagree on Wednesday, then the deal will be off the table.
Yep, and it's not even just the members, is it? Because we've got Russia, a big orchestrator when it comes to these meetings. Obviously, Russia's enduring a recession, absolutely energy dependent and determined to come to an agreement. But there's been some noises from their energy minister saying that he's not entirely confident.
Absolutely, and Russia, for them, the way I look at it, and fairly so, they really want to see whether OPEC has made a concrete decision or not. It's almost pointless for a non-OPEC producer to say, yes, we are going to cut, when OPEC itself has not made a concrete decision. And on that side, they're quite fair. On the other hand, it also shows the vulnerability and fragility of this market, that the OPEC has to rely so much today on non-OPEC than ever before. Because I do completely agree, without non-OPEC's contribution to these cuts, and without non-OPEC, that means OPEC is not ready to take all that hit. Ultimately, so without non-OPEC's contribution, a cut from OPEC will not be enough either. So hence, it kind of tells you that when you have so many players involved, not just OPEC and non-OPEC, you've already got a very difficult negotiation going on in place. And that's why we are remaining slightly skeptical, despite knowing that they are giving some positive signs of trying to agree or reach a deal.
So caution when it comes to OPEC, really. In terms of people that want to get involved with the markets next week, it's going to be incredibly volatile, though, isn't it? We've also got low volumes as well because of the time of year. But do you think it's a brave soul that trades oil next week, or do you think you just have to be very smart about it?
Well, to be honest, for 2 days right now, we have got Thanksgiving in the US, so we're just seeing slightly quieter market than usual. But as the Americans come back from their holiday, next week, a lot of people are going to try and at least either get themselves ready for what decision OPEC makes, because this could be one of the biggest decision OPEC makes in 2 years, and that could add, as you said, a lot of volatility in the market. And is there a brave soul out there? I think it really depends on what positions they've had in the past, and if they can make, if you're a speculator, any money out of this position that you take based on OPEC's decision. It's very difficult to take a call.
Talking of brave souls, let's talk about Mr. Donald Trump, because he's come and he, with his rhetoric, he's certainly not shy in what he says, and he's determined, despite global warming, to pump up this oil production, isn't he? And that completely goes against whatever OPEC is trying to do, which is very difficult. But there's another factor, so we're going to talk about Donald Trump, but also the US dollar, because the strength of it also plays into the price of oil, because we have seen a dip.
Absolutely. So first of all, when it comes to Donald Trump, I agree that his views as a presidential candidate were all obviously very pro-fossil fuel. Let's first wait and see which one of those views really translate into reality once he's sworn in as a president in January, and then we'll be able to decide. But if you had to make a quick guess on what he has said so far in the past, of course you're right. On the demand side for oil products is good news, because he's trying to scrap, let's assume, the COP21 treaty from United States side, and on the upstream side he's likely to give them a little bit of a benefit by levying more import taxes on the crude that is imported, versus maybe perhaps giving some advantage to the home producers. That actually is a double-edged sword, because if he does that, it means that US production is likely to rise as these producers get incentive to increase production, despite the situation not being that great still in the US, to be honest. But if they increase production, that means prices come under pressure, and I can't see how that is going to help some of the producers in the US to begin with. So it's a double-edged sword. As far as dollar is concerned, I agree. Dollar did rise very rapidly on the back of the elections, as we have seen. However, we are not seeing immediately after that rise an impact on oil prices. And on the contrary, oil prices rose until last week. And that's because oil is purely in the current environment being driven by OPEC, in my view. And that's why there's a dislocation there. However, post next week, despite a small drop, because like I said, markets is a bit quiet in the last 2 days, but next week after the OPEC decision, you probably will see a little bit more of an impact of dollar on oil once the OPEC's decision is out of the way for oil.
Mr. Deshpande, thank you very much indeed. So we were talking about oil there, Mr. Trump and the US dollar, and really all eyes are on Austria next week for the 30th of November. Will they cut or won't they? That's the biggest question of the week.